If not, they can always watch the playback. But over the last two sessions, we talked about building kind of a framework for prospecting. In the first session, we talked about the big picture of prospecting and why it matters. And we looked at the four key steps that drive income in real estate: generating leads and converting leads and closing transactions and building that repeat business. And then on Tuesday, we focused on what is usually the easiest place on earth for most agents to start: their sphere of influence, their social network, their family and friends, and everybody you're connected with. And we talked about circle prospecting, how one listing can create conversations throughout a neighborhood. Now, today we're going to shift into a different kind of prospecting. Instead of waiting for people we know to raise their hand, we're going to talk about going out and finding opportunities. And we're going to cover three powerful prospecting methods. One that you probably don't want to hear about, which is cold calling neighborhoods. Second is working expired listings. And third is going to be for sale by owners. And I'll bring up some of the techniques that you probably see online by people that are trying to sell their programs as well. And I know when some agents hear the words cold calling, their heart rate starts jumping. Goes up a little bit, but the truth is these three prospecting methods all have something in common with each other. You're talking to homeowners who might sell or might already have tried to sell and still need help. And when you make consistent phone calls, when you have consistent conversations, that's where you build business. On Tuesday, I put this up as well. It's from Helen Keller. There aren't any shortcuts to any place worth going. There are all those ads online where all you have to do is watch my 2-hour video and suddenly you'll make lots of money and you never have to lift a finger. That doesn't really exist. And the other one I'm going to put up is Floyd Wickman, who created the Sweat Hogs program. And I might mention that again today, which is there's nothing special about special people. It's what they do that make them special, not who they are. One of the things Floyd Wickman used to say in his Sweat Hogs program, and I'll circle back around to this as well, but Floyd used to say that once you got through the 12 or the 11 weeks of the program, which was one day a week for 11 weeks, and it was a lot of money back then. It was between $1,200 and $2,000 depending on when you took it. That program, and again, this is 25 years ago, that was a lot of money. When he was running it, and he was the top trainer in the country for decades, he used to say that when you're done with that 11 weeks, they could parachute you anywhere in the country, and within 90 days, you could be earning an above average income. And it's true, and I'll give you a couple of examples of that, but it's a little bit more challenging because of all the phone call laws and the fact we all have caller ID on the phone. Now, I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But before I start, I wanted to mention this because it's something that came up today. And I was looking at this happens to be Hawley, Pennsylvania. It doesn't matter where it is because the location isn't important. What I did was I pulled up real estate offices in this area. And there are a few of them. There's a Coldwell Banker and a Realty Executives and so on. That's fine. But all these other dots are not actually real estate offices. And if you look over on the left, Karen Rice with Keller Williams, Will Klaus from Lake Wallenpaupack Realty, Sarah Teague with Lake Wallenpaupack Realty, and Michaela McCord, Keller Williams. Now, the reason I'm pointing this out is if you haven't done this yet, please take the time to do it. Do not put our office address down. The whole idea behind this is they're putting down their houses. If you try and put down our office address, it co-ops the office address. But as an example, if you live in, Catasauqua, Pennsylvania, I'm picking a place where probably none of our agents live. You go to Google My Business and create a business address for yourself at your home. And then when somebody's searching the map and they search realtors and they're looking at Catasauqua, you'll pop up. And if you have your website attached, all these people have their website attached, and you can do that in Moxie, or we can help you get it set up in Moxie. If you have a website, you can put that down as the link that they can go back to search for properties and learn about you and your services, but also puts in your phone number and stuff. So it is something that everybody's doing right now. They're Googling businesses, and if you aren't there, it really does help to have your house listed as an office, even though it's not really an office. Now, again, before we jump into today's topic, I want to remind you of something that we talked about Tuesday. There are 4 steps to growing your income in real estate. The formula itself is actually pretty simple. The execution is where it gets a little interesting. Step 1 is to generate more leads. If you don't have people to talk to, it's hard to sell real estate, and that's where prospecting comes in. Step 2 is to convert a greater percentage of those prospects. That means when you meet somebody, whether it's on the phone or in person, who wants to buy or sell, you have to present yourself well enough that they choose to work with you instead of somebody else. Step three is following up systematically. We talked a lot about that on Tuesday. It's where many agents struggle. Real estate isn't just about meeting people, it's about staying in touch with them until the timing is right. Let me just make sure I am recording, by the way. Yes, I am. Good. And step four is to really take care of those clients, deliver exceptional service so that they send you everybody that they know. In other words, the long-term goal of every transaction is not just the commission check, it's the next five clients that come from that happy client. And today we're going to focus primarily on step one, which is generating more leads. And the other thing I always point out in the beginning is when it comes to generating leads in real estate, there are really only three major ways business shows up. The first is generating referrals, those relationships you build through your network, your sphere of influence, your past clients, and your community. And that's what we talked about in the second session. The second way is paying for business, and we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, buying leads from Zillow or Realtor.com or paying referral fees to OpCity or other lead services, running online ads. And that absolutely works, although sometimes the cost of those leads make you feel like you should be sending your commission check directly to Zillow. And the third source, the one we're focusing on today, is proactively going out and prospecting. And that means picking up the phone, knocking on doors, calling expired listings, calling for sale by owners. And that's where you stop waiting for business to find you and you go out and you find business. Before we get into prospecting, though, particularly when we're talking about cold calling or calling expired listings, I do want to briefly talk about something that's slightly less exciting but very important, and that's compliance. Because prospecting is great, but staying out of trouble is even better. And there are a few federal rules we need to keep in mind. And please keep in mind, we've had three different groups come after us in the last 2 years in court over making calls. And we're not the only ones. I think every real estate company in the Valley has probably been sued by somebody who's trying to take them to court for violating the Telephone Consumer Protection Act laws because it's a way for them to make money. They want to try and use that leverage to try and siphon more money out of real estate companies. So first of all, there are calling rules. You shouldn't call before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m. Second, the do not call lists. You can go to donotcall.gov and look up the phone numbers if you can. Consumers have the right to place their phone number on that do not call list, and we have to respect that. Unless you already have a relationship with them, which is fine. Or if they called you on a property, you have the right to call them back. There are also rules around established business relationships, meaning that if you have recently worked with someone, sold them property last year or whatever, certainly you can call them. But the one thing to be careful about is predictive dialers or multi-line dialers, because those can create something called abandoned calls, which regulators really don't like. So if you haven't ever run across that or seen advertisements online, there's one called Vortex, there's one called Vulcan 7. They dial the phone for you, and they can dial three numbers at the same time. And if somebody picks up, it clicks over to your phone so you can talk to them. It's not actually legal in the United States. I know they sell the software, but it's not. So be real careful of that when you're talking to people. And there are also rules around texting and automated outreach under the TCPA, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. So the safest and simplest rule is if you're making one-to-one calls personally, you're fine as long as you're operating in the hours you're allowed to and not calling somebody that you don't have a relationship with or is on the do not call list. And when people do get in trouble with things like robocalls and automated dialers and automated texting systems, it's usually because they didn't get some sort of prior consent or have some sort of relationship with them. There's also rules about what they call ringless voicemail, which is not a magic loophole some people hoped for. And with texting, it's best to treat it as a permission-based communication. So in other words, ask first. Would it be okay if I text you some information about this home? And if it's simple, respectful, and compliant, you're fine. Most people are not a problem, but there are people out there sitting there waiting for you to call them. I know we get junk calls all day long. The front desk has gotten, probably 20 today. But there are people sitting there waiting for someone to violate the law so that they can take them to court and try and go after them for $10,000 to $2 million in the case of one of the people who tried to go after us. But anyway, today we're going to talk about one of the oldest, simplest, and most powerful ways to generate listings in real estate, and that's the one is also the most feared, and that's cold calling. And I want to start with this before I get into expireds and for sale by owners, because I want to kind of start with the basics and go forward. And I know this can cause a little anxiety because most agents would rather clean the office microwave than pick up the phone. But the reality is, cold calling still does actually work, and it works incredibly well for agents to do it consistently. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to make those calls in a way that feels natural, professional, and productive. And the goal isn't to pressure people. The goal is simply to start conversations that lead to opportunities. Now, I will mention two people since Holly's on. I'll mention her mom, and I'll also mention Kathy Rogers as examples over the years of some of the stuff that we've done. And so Kathy Rogers had started with us many years ago. She ended up becoming our top agent for a while before she ended up leaving the business for some other personal reasons to spend time with her kids. But she had needed to make money right now and couldn't wait. And I had just gone through the Sweat Hogs program. I think Tim and a couple of us had gone through, and it was they made us. If you haven't heard this story before, and I apologize if I'm circling around this, the Sweat Hogs program did a lot of things. It gave you the ability to reflexively answer questions, to handle objections, and to do great presentations. But where it started, the first 4 weeks out of 11 was all on prospecting. And they were full days just on prospecting. And one of the things that they made you do in the beginning was the first week they told you, now remember, we might have just paid $2,000 to go to this. They said, you're going to go to the office this next week, 3 days. You're going to sit down for those 3 days and you're going to make calls until you get an appointment. You're going to start with houses around where you sold something recently or where your office sold something recently and talk to them. And then you might eventually you'll call expired listings for sale by owners. And then you're going to just cold call till you get an appointment. Because realistically, if 14% of the population puts their house on the market, if you call 120 people, somebody's going to say, yes, I'm thinking about selling. Now, those days, more people picked up the phone, so that's a little bit of a challenge. So Kathy needed money right away. And so we got her doing this. Now, incidentally, with Sweat Hogs, the way they made you do it is that you became responsible to somebody else. So you had to check on each other and that you tattled on each other. So let's say Bill was the other part against me. I had to make cold calls until I got an appointment. Bill had to make cold calls until he got an appointment. If one of us didn't do it 3 days that week, the next week when we came in, we had to wear a dunce cap for the entire session. If we did it 2 weeks in a row, we had to wear pig ears and a pig nose. And if we didn't do it 3 weeks in a row, we got kicked out of the program and they didn't refund the money. The idea was to force you to do what you didn't want to do to be successful. And it worked because the average person in Sweat Hogs around the country did more than 12 listings in 11 weeks. And that's pretty hard to do, but it worked. So with Kathy, we had her start cold calling, and she did it. And she only called maybe 3 hours a day, 3 days a week, so about 9 hours a week. And she got a listing appointment every day she called. So she would go on 3 listing appointments a week, and out of three, one of them usually lists. So she did get, I think, 54 listings that first year of cold calling. And out of the 54 listings, it was a slow market, by the way. 70% of them sold. So she had, 35, 38 sales, whatever that was. And about half of those people also bought a house, which meant she had 50 some sales, transactions in 1 year. Now today, 50 some transactions at, $5,000 or $6,000 per transaction to an agent is $250,000, $300,000. That's just from cold calling. She did that for about a year or maybe a year and a half. And then she had so much business coming from referrals, she stopped doing it. Now, Ellie, as an example, was struggling a little bit in the beginning. And I talked her into, because I was more aggressive those days, I'm not today. I talked her into calling expireds every morning. Now, those days, there were a lot of expired listings because it was also a poor market. And she would call them. She was great on the phone. But she used the scripts that we had from Sweat Hogs, from Floyd Wickman. And she did so well with it. I think she had, now I co-listed most of them with her, but I think she had about 100 listings in 1 year that she was doing the expired listings. I think she called for probably 2 years, but one of the years she had about 100. Just to kind of give you an idea of what the possibilities are when you actually reach out and try and talk to people. Anyway, cold calling does work today for one simple reason. Most agents don't do it. So real estate agents love marketing that feels comfortable. Social media posts, newsletters, online ads, all of those. Those are all great tools, but they're all passive. So how do we When we need a piece of business, how do we create something? Now, on Tuesday, we talked about the idea that you should go to everybody you know, every past client, every person in your social network, and you should be texting them. And we talked a little bit about the Zillow concept where you might look their house up on Zillow. In the morning, you might look up three or four or five of them and text them and say, "Hey, I looked up your house on Zillow. I see that it's this amount. Um, I know I've got some thoughts on that. What do you think?" And get them in a conversation. Remind them that you're in real estate and remind them that you're out there, and that works. But maintain that ongoing communication. But other than that, most of what we do is passive and cold calling is active. So when you pick up the phone, you're having a real conversation with a real person about one of the most valuable assets they own, and that's powerful. Listings come from conversations, and the more conversations you have with homeowners, the more opportunities you create. So agents who are willing to make those calls consistently often have a major advantage over people who aren't. The big difference, though, between how most agents operate and how a top producer operates is that most agents wake up in the morning and hope the phone rings. Top agents wake up and they make the phone ring. They don't wait for business to come to them, they go out and find it. And in Ellie's case, as an example, she started with expired listings. If she didn't get an appointment there, she moved on to for sale by owners, which were tougher. And then she might do some just sold calling around an area. But most of what she did was expireds. At those days, we didn't have text messaging. So we didn't have the ability to start text messaging family and friends, which would have been another source of possible business. So you don't have to be pushy or aggressive. In fact, the best prospectors are often very conversational and relaxed. We used to do calls, and we used to have these pizza nights where we do phone calls. And one of them was around the time when you pushed your clock forward or backward and saying, "Hey, it's just a courtesy call from Century 21 Kime. Wanted to let you know that tomorrow is when you have to set your clock ahead or set your clock back. And it's a good time to change the batteries in your smoke alarms if you haven't done it." And they usually say, "Oh, thanks." And you say, "Oh, just a shot in the dark. Just checking you don't happen to be wanting to sell or buy a property, do you?" And that actually worked to generate a lot of leads. So things you can do. So if you talk to enough homeowners, eventually some of them are going to need help selling a house. One of the biggest obstacles agents face with cold calling is mindset. Many people feel like they're interrupting someone, but if you flip that around, you're not calling to bother someone, you're calling to offer helpful information about the market. And that's one of the reasons a lot of what we talked about at the end last or on Tuesday was circle prospecting, letting people know about a recent sale or a recent listing in a neighborhood because they do want to hear about that and you're not bothering them. Homeowners constantly want to know things like what's my home's worth, when is a good time to sell, what are homes selling for nearby. And those are exactly the kind of things real estate professionals help people understand. So when you make a call, you're not trying to pressure someone to sell their house today. You're just starting a conversation and offering your expertise. And then, of course, if they have any interest at all, you start follow-up campaigns, whether it's by email or sending them a handwritten thank you note or maintaining a phone call every 30, 90 days, whatever time frame they're in. And again, one of the most important things to understand about cold calling is the goal is not getting a listing today. That actually creates too much pressure to put on a single phone call. Instead, the goal is to start a conversation. If someone talks with you for a few minutes, you've already succeeded. And maybe they're thinking about selling in a year. Maybe it's 2 years from now. Maybe they just want to know what their home might be worth. But those conversations are how relationships begin. And those relationships are ultimately where listings come from. And one of the biggest reasons that agents struggle with cold calling is simple. They call without preparing. If you call a homeowner and they ask a question about the market, you should be able to answer it with confidence. And that confidence makes the conversation feel more professional than awkward. So before making any calls, if you're going to call a neighborhood, spend a few minutes reviewing what's happening in that neighborhood. And by the way, if you haven't done this yet, if you want to pull information on a neighborhood, we subscribe to RedX. Now, we can only pull 500 houses a month on our current subscription, but I don't think anybody's doing it anyway. So you can pull a neighborhood, all the houses in it, and what their phone numbers are. It will also tell you in that neighborhood which ones of them are on the do not call list. So if you do that, you can absolutely go through and start calling through them. But before you do, look at things like how many homes that have just sold in that neighborhood, what they are, so you can talk about them intelligently. You might want to have them printed next to you. Any homes that are on the market in the neighborhood. If I'm calling Alton Park, which I used to do many years ago, I'd have a printout of what was for sale in Alton Park and what had sold in the last 6 months so I could talk about them. How long properties on the market are on the market there, 3 days, 5 days, a month and a half. And if you say something like, hey, we just sold a house 2 streets over for 525,000, you instantly sound credible. And you didn't say you sold it, you said we sold it. Because frankly, if you are calling around a neighborhood, I would check with the listing agent first from the company. But I don't think most people in our company are making that time to make that call. So that preparation turns a cold call into a knowledgeable conversation. Now, agents do always ask me, when's the best time to make cold calls? And the honest answer is whenever you actually do it. That said, there are some time windows that, according to Google, work better. I don't know if it's true or not. I know that Floyd Wickman used to say in his Sweat Hugs program, start first thing in the morning and just start calling. There is a team over at Keller Williams. It's kind of funny. Liana from Stroudsburg had asked me why this particular team did so well. What is their marketing? And I know the team quite well. They actually have 5 or 6 agents, and I know some of you would be horrified to hear this. They make this small team come in every morning for 3 hours, and the entire team sits in one room and cold calls every day. And they are the top team over there. But that's because of what they do. I'm not saying you have to necessarily do that, but that's what they do in the morning. Their morning hours, they don't do appointments in the morning, do them in the afternoon, but their morning hours are making calls. But according to Google, the best times to call are between 8:30 and 10:30 in the morning when people are getting started with their day but might still be home. Later afternoon, 4:30 to 6:30 also works well when people are just getting home from work. Saturday mornings are also a good window, and a key point is that consistency matters more than perfect timing. An agent who calls every day at a regular time will outperform someone who spends weeks trying to figure out what the perfect time is, but never actually makes the calls. And cold calling is much easier when you follow a simple structure. And I lay it out as 5 basic steps. First, introduce yourself. Second, you clearly explain the reason you're calling so you're not scaring them. Third, you ask a question to get them talking, get the homeowner talking. Fourth, you provide something of value. And whatever we do when we talk about marketing, everything we do we try and offer value. So even when I talk about unique prospecting methods, we did some for Valentine's Day, we did some back around Halloween in November, I think. How do you offer value to everybody around you? So think of ways you can do that. Oh, and by the way, if you are posting something on social media, remember in 5 days is St. Patrick's Day. So look up the email that I sent you with those St. Patrick's ads and make sure to share them on social media. So clearly explain the reason you're calling, ask the question of the homeowner to get them talking. Fourth, provide something of value. And finally, do a soft close. And I said soft close. We're not pressuring them into listing their house, not during a first phone call. The goal is simply to open the door for a future conversation. And that's what you're building, this pipeline. So when you introduce yourself, keep it simple and keep it natural. Many agents make the mistake of overcomplicating that part. They start by explaining their entire career history before the homeowner even knows why they're calling. You just need something like this. Hi, this is Lauren with Century 21 here in Allentown. And that's it. You sound professional. You identify who you are. They sigh because it's another realtor. And you keep the conversation moving. Remember, your goal is to sound like a neighbor calling with helpful information, not somebody reading from a telemarketing script. And once you introduce yourself, you immediately explain why you're calling, and it clarifies what you're doing. For example, hey, the reason I'm calling is that we just sold a house in your neighborhood, and I wanted to see if you or any of the neighbors had thought about moving. That works because it's logical and relevant. People understand why you might be calling if something sold nearby. And it also opens the door to a natural question like, have you ever thought about moving at all in the next year or two? And you've shifted the conversation from cold call into a real discussion. This works really well. You can also let them know I can give you information on the sale if it's already closed. So that is something they'll often want to talk about, which gets you into that conversation. Now, once you've introduced yourself and explained why you're calling, most important thing you can do next is ask a question. And that's where the conversation really begins. So one of the biggest mistakes agents make on cold calls is talking too much. They try to explain everything they know about the market without ever letting the homeowner speak. So instead, ask simple questions that get people talking. Things like, How long have you lived in the home? And by the way, you can see it on the CRS tax records when how long they've lived in the home. But you're asking them anyway. I worked with May Diamond, for a long time in real estate. And when I set up a listing appointment, I already had everything about the house because I either pulled the old listing or the tax record. But before we went out on a listing, May would actually call them back and ask them simple questions because she was trying to build a connection with them, trying to build a rapport. And it worked really well so that they felt like they knew us by the time we got there. This is the same general idea. We're trying to get them to talk to us. So, how long have you lived in the home? Did you see yourself staying there for forever? Have you ever thought about selling at some point in the near future? Or when people start talking about their home, their neighborhood, or their future plans, that call becomes a conversation instead of a sales pitch. And conversations are where opportunities come from. And then after asking questions, the next step is to provide something useful. Think of it as your moment to show that you're not just making random phone calls, you actually have information that could help them. So for example, you might say, "Hey, if you'd ever like to know what your home might sell for in today's market, I'd be happy to put together a quick home value report for you." Or you might mention buyer demand in the neighborhood. Many homeowners have no idea how strong the market might be in the area. Um, you can say something along those lines. And when you share information like that, you position yourself as a local expert. And that's exactly how you want them to see you. Now, the final step of the call, the close, but this is where a lot of agents get nervous because they think they have to ask for the listing. They don't. In fact, most calls that would be way too aggressive. Instead, you just use a soft close. "Hey, would it be helpful if I emailed you a quick market update? Or if you'd ever like to know what your home might sell for, I'd be happy to prepare that for you." A soft close keeps the conversation comfortable while opening the door for a future relationship. And remember, the goal isn't to win the listing today, it's to stay on their radar when they eventually decide to sell. And I do want to point out also that if you do have a good conversation with them, take a minute and write a handwritten note to them and mail it out. That works really well. If you get their email address, you can email them as well, but that handwritten note really resonates with them, and that allows you to throw a business card in there, and they are most likely going to hold on to that business card. I've done this, and people call me back with my business card 3 or 4 years later, and they've still got it. So I'm going to go through, these are some of the old scripts I've used. These aren't new that we just created, but I'll give you some examples of some of the stuff we did when we did a lot of this that worked pretty well. "Hi, Mrs. Jones. This is Simon Bonaparte calling from Century 21 Kime. I'm just calling because we recently sold your neighbor's home on Prospect Avenue. The home was a beautiful split level style, and we had calls from other buyers interested in the area. I'm just calling to see if you might know of anybody else in the neighborhood that might be considering selling their home as well. If it's the homeowner you're speaking with, if they ask you how much the home sold for, there's a good chance they might be considering selling themselves. And again, follow up with a personal note card and thank them. Another simple direct method might be, "Hi, Mr. Smith. This is William Shakespeare calling from Century 21. I'm trying to find homes for my firm to market. I'm just wondering if you might be considering selling yours." Now, that's a straightforward method. We can cold call for buyers. "Hi, Mr. DiCarlo. This is Muhammad Ali calling from Century 21 Big Dudes Real Estate. I'm calling because I'm looking for renters who are considering taking advantage of the current real estate market and becoming homeowners. We've got some great deals right now. Just checking to see if you might be planning to buy a home this year." By the way, I'll segue here for just a minute since we're talking about prospecting. One of the campaigns that we've run every so often that has worked really, really well, but it hasn't worked. We haven't been able to do it the last few years because there's been no inventory. And as inventory probably is going to start building over the next year, it might be something to consider. We used to go out and take flyers out to rental apartment areas. So we might hit a subdivision of rentals, apartment complexes. We might hit areas that are heavy in rentals. And Joyce was one of our top realtors for a while. She actually was the one who did this heavily. She took flyers out that said something along the lines of, "Your rent is probably between 1,500 and 2,000 a month, and for that amount of money, you can buy a home for $4,200 down and only $1,750 a month." And that, by the way, was using a special FHA program at the time. But there are several community programs right now that will help to pay some of the closing costs on some of these FHA type loans. And on some of them, you can get into a house with as little as about 3.5 to 5% total down. In some cases, you can get away with 1% down. But if you're buying a house for $200,000, if you can get into that house for 6,000, 6,500, there are many renters who have that or can put it together. And that can also be a gift. So that worked well. We also ran ads on Craigslist later, but in the morning call earlier, which would say home for rent, sale, or at least purchase. And then we'd say beautiful row home in West Allentown available for only $1,975 per month. Um, call for details. And then we'd have it go to the agent's voicemail box or cell phone because we did not want those calls in the office. But for when we're advertising something that shows up for rent for 2 grand a month, we would get 100 phone calls over a week. And Joyce did this first. After that, we had Michelle Miller did it for quite a while. She did 6 million in 1 year. We had Teresa did it for a little while, and we've had a few others do it as well. Joyce unfortunately got sick, which is why she stopped doing it. But she'd get 100 calls, 120 calls, and she'd call all of them back, and she'd say, "Hey, I noticed you answered my ad in Craigslist for a property for rent, lease, purchase, or buy. I'm just curious, are you looking to rent or buy?" Now, all of them are looking to rent, every one of them. And then her response was the owner would really rather sell it. So we're going to see if any of the people who called me, 100 of them, are interested in buying first, and then I'll get back to you if they still want to rent. But I'm just curious if you could buy this house for $5,000 down and $1,820 a month to own it rather than 1975 to rent. Would you be interested? And they'd say, is that a lease purchase? And we'd say, no, that was actually a type of FHA loan if you'd qualify for this particular program. And out of 120 people, usually 10 would let us run credit. Usually 4 of them could actually buy a property after running their credit, but all 4 of those people would buy a house. So Joyce ran this campaign 1 week out of every 3. So she'd pull it off for 2 weeks because otherwise you get the same people. And then every 3 weeks, she'd run it again. And she'd have a particular house that she'd be advertising it on. We'd have to get the permission from the owner to advertise it that way first. But we would get actually lots and lots of calls. And she would actually create buyers out of thin air because they didn't realize they could own a house. The other interesting thing is very often those people referred her a lot of business because none of their friends thought they could own a house either. Now, part of the challenge with this approach is in order to use some of these programs, we have to wrap some of the closing costs into the mortgage, which means part of it's being paid by, let's say, a community action group, but part of it we need the owner to pay, the seller to pay. And that's a little harder right now when the market's tight, but it should be easing up a little bit. So it is a concept that you might be able to use. Another approach, Mr. Abergast, this is Clark Kent calling from the Daily Realtor. I'm calling to let you know about an exciting new mortgage program that can get you into a home with only $1,600 total cash out of pocket. Now today it'd be more like $5,000, and a payment of less than you're currently paying for rent. If you could own your own home instead of giving your landlord money every month and do it for less than you're paying right now, would you consider buying? And again, these are scripts that some of our agents use to try and pick up buyers when buyers were tough. Right now, listings are tough, so we have to focus on listings. And then some creative stuff. Hey, Mr. Oswald, my name's Rob Evans. I'm a real estate investor in the area. I'm also an investment specialist here at Century 21. I'm sorry to bother you, but I noticed that you own some property near mine. I was just wondering if you're considering adding to your portfolio by buying more properties, or if you were considering liquidating, selling off some properties while the market was hot. And just to give you some background on this, we used this with a particular agent. He unfortunately passed away really young. But he did this for about 2 years, and his first year in the business, now this is 15 years ago, but his first year he did about 4.5 million. His second year he did close to 9 million. And he was shopping specifically investors because he had an interesting thought, and it's true. We were able to pull these from a software program, the owners. The interesting thing is that investors usually are either considering buying more properties or selling what they've got. They're usually not stagnant. So you can pick up either a buyer or a seller from investment properties, which is kind of interesting. If you get voicemail, there are no answering machines anymore, but if you get voicemail, In today's society, many people screen their calls. I once heard the real estate super trainer Brian Buffini refer to the answering machine as the moat that protects the family's castle. So voicemail is the gatekeeper that prevents someone from having to speak with you or anybody they don't want to. But if you've got a well-rehearsed voicemail message with a few details, you may entice potential clients to call you back. And remember that your goal in cold calling is to actually directly interact with someone in order to determine if they're looking to buy or sell. So the method that's provided the highest percentage callbacks that we've used has been to leave a message that simply states you want to talk to them in reference to either their home or your company. So don't waste your time asking on the machine whether or not they're planning to buy or sell. If they are, they're probably not going to call you back from a message. But you might call back and say, hey, Mrs. Pratt, this is Dave Barry calling from Century 21. I'm calling in reference to your home. Please give me a call back at your earliest convenience. That sort of thing tends to work better than something else. Second method is to tell them you're calling in regard to your company. In that case, the responses have been greater if you don't mention that you are from the company. The assumption made by many hearing it is that there's an issue with the company and they may be interested in finding out what. So, hey, Mrs. Ivy, this is Greg McGuire calling. I'm calling in reference to Century 21. Please call me back at your earliest convenience. That'll sometimes lead to some callbacks as well. So, and if you are going to call a cold call, you should treat it like any business process, not just something you try once in a while. And that means tracking your numbers. How many calls did I make? How many conversations did I have? How many appointments did I set? And how many listings resulted from the conversations? Because that tells you how you're doing. And when you start seeing progress, you do it more. Over time, you see patterns. Same thing with dieting. And I use dieting as an example too often. And I probably should go on a diet. I probably shouldn't be thinking about that donut right now. But anyway, if you are tracking your weight every day and you track it from week to week, you're more likely to stick to the diet because you're seeing what's happening. If you are talking to people consistently on the phone and you start making progress, you're more likely to continue that progress. So, for example, many agents discover something like 100 calls lead to about 20 conversations. 20 conversations might lead to one appointment. And one of those appointments might turn into a listing. So if you know your numbers, prospecting becomes less mysterious. And you can create a pretty simple call tracker sheet. If anybody needs this, we can create one in Google Sheets for you and share it with you. You can use it all day long. An easy way for you to track it, and it can automatically tell you how you're doing because we can have it do sums and totals and what are called pivot tables to tell you what your percentages are. And just coming back to being honest for a second, I mean, I'm honest all the time, but for many agents, cold calling feels a little bit like this. You pick up the phone, your heart rate goes up, you feel a little sick. You start wondering if you should suddenly reorganize your desk instead, or maybe update your social media profile, or maybe move to another country. But here's the funny thing. Once you start making calls, the fears usually disappear after the first few conversations. You might get yelled at by somebody. It's okay. Cold calling is one of those things where the anticipation is much worse than the reality. One last thought to help keep cold calling in perspective. Sometimes agents imagine that the person answering the phone is going to be angry, annoyed, or hostile. And once in a while they are. But in reality, the person on the other end of the phone is probably just somebody sitting at home in sweatpants eating cereal. And they're just another person. And when you approach that call as a normal conversation instead of a sales pitch, most people respond very positively. And the secret behind successful prospecting, it's not talent, it's not the perfect script, it's being consistent. The agent who talks to 10 homeowners a day is eventually going to create opportunities. 10 conversations a day becomes 50 conversations a week. 50 conversations a week becomes hundreds of conversations over a couple of months. And somewhere in those conversations are future listings. And the agents who succeed are the ones who keep showing up and doing the activity consistently. Now, I'm going to tell you, first, you should be calling your sphere of influence, your social network, your family and friends. But if you don't have anything going from those, then next, well, you're in past clients. Next, you're going to be calling around properties you just sold. That's circle prospecting. If that doesn't work, then maybe the next level is going to be expired listings or for sale by owners. And then the next level is going to be that because we know they're looking at buying or selling, or that they're looking at selling. And then the next level is cold calling in general. And one final thought on cold calling. The listing you get next month usually starts with a conversation you had today. So cold calling isn't about pressure or persuasion. It's about building relationships. You're sharing information and you're letting homeowners know that you're there when they need your help. And if you consistently talk to homeowners and provide value and follow up, listings do follow. So if you pick up the phone and start conversations, remember that every call is simply an opportunity. I cannot tell you how many times I've called somebody and they'd say, I was just thinking about selling my home. My husband and I were talking about it yesterday. And it seems like it's some sort of, gift from God type thing that suddenly I happen to call when it was actually my 68th phone call. Now, the second level I want to talk about today are expired listings. They're properties that have been on the market with a real estate broker for a period of time and didn't sell. And those properties were taken off the market by the owners, or their listing contract with their new realtor expired, with their old realtor expired. Expired listings can be found in the multiple listing system and every day. And many of these properties are listed again with another real estate broker within a couple of days of the property being taken off the market. Most expired listings come back on the market within a year unless the seller's plans have changed. The vast majority of them come back on the market. Once in a while, a seller finds they can't sell for enough money, or they rent it out, or they just decide not to move. But once a person or a family decides to relocate or move to a larger home or move down to a smaller one, or simply gets an uncontrollable itch for new surroundings, they generally do move. Even if the owners take a few months off in between realtors, they generally relist at some point. So calling or stopping by the home of an expired listing can be a quick method of building your personal listing inventory. Wassel, by the way, as an example, used to go out and actually knock on the doors of expired listings and try and catch them at home because it was something nobody else did. Although expired listing market can be a very lucrative source of business, it's also one market where you're going to run into a lot of competition from other agencies and other agents because it is one of those things where everybody knows they're going to be coming back on the market. Dwight's saying you have to ask him what went wrong. I'm going to get to that. That's true. There are two important reminders when working with expireds. First, take the time to create a game plan for how you approach expired listings. And as you work the expired market, you're also going to be able to tweak your methods or approach and improve them. And then second, just like any other form of prospecting, make sure if you're going to target expired listings, do it consistently. Don't just take a hit and miss approach by calling through the expireds once or occasionally and expect it to work. Consistency is the key to any long-term success. Now, how do you find expireds? On the MLS system, just run a search of properties that have a status expired that may have expired in the last couple of days. Expiration date of today or yesterday, you may choose to go back as far as a week. But if you go back too far, chances are they've already listed with somebody else and you're wasting your time. You should contact the seller of an expired listing the day it comes off the market. That's your best chance of getting it. Now, the only deviation from this is something that we used to do a lot. Actually, Dwight used to do this with a whole team, and I used to do it as well, January 1st. So just after holiday season, generally January 1st or 2nd, and I know January 1st is a holiday, but I did it anyway. Everybody was home. Some property sellers who didn't relist the prior year, in the fall they took it off and they left it off through the holidays, are getting ready to put it on the market and test the waters again. So we would go back and we'd research everything that expired the last 6 months. And this took a lot of work, by the way. So if there were, 200 expireds a month or 400 expireds a month, depending on what kind of market it was, right now there's more like, 60, but still, we'd go through and check if they ever came back on the market and if they were active or sold, and we'd cross them off our list. And what was left, we would call on January 1st and 2nd and say, hey, I noticed your house went off the market last year. And the reason we did this, by the way, is because nobody's doing it. Well, we call them and say, we know your house went off the market last year. I'm just checking to see if you're thinking about putting it back on the market this year. And the second time period was about 2 weeks before the market gets hot. So about this week, mid-March, early March, the spring market is coming. This is when people start thinking about it. So now is the time I'd go back and pick up the last 6 or 8 months expireds, try and figure out what didn't come back on the market and start calling it. So before I get started with this, the seller's perspective is you've got to consider their mindset or their frame of reference, I should say. What's going through their mind is they listed their home with a realtor 6 months ago, and their expectation was their home was going to sell fast and they'd have to be out of their home too quickly. They all think that, by the way. After all, they've got the nicest home in the neighborhood. They've got the heavy-duty nails. They've got the 2 foot wider deck or whatever it is. Everybody thinks they've got the nicest house. And they chose a realtor who had a good reputation or was from a reputable firm or someone that they were connected with. And they have not heard from that realtor in the last 3.5 months. That's reality because the realtor gets embarrassed. And these people are very upset. They're depressed. They're mad at all realtors because we're all salespeople. We should be ranked up there with used car salesmen, not just used car salesmen. We should be ranked up there with used cars, with rust on the bumpers. And to complete the thought process, if they don't understand why you didn't sell their home when it was on the market, obviously the home was available in the multiple listing system. Why wouldn't you have sold it? Now you're calling them. What's the deal? So you're potentially walking into a situation where they're very unhappy and they don't believe anything that a realtor says. And they probably don't even realize that the house went off the market yet in some cases. They knew it was coming up at some point, but since they haven't heard from their agent in the last 3.5 months, they didn't know that the expiration date was today. So as soon as that house comes off the market, they suddenly get 30 phone calls from realtors and 100 letters out of the blue. So, and this is not an exaggeration, by the way, especially when the market was a little slower. Sometimes people would get 100 plus letters from realtors. They all claim to be number one, by the way, which is a mistake. And they get a lot of phone calls. And half these callers would say the exact same thing because they had all been trained by the same two or three real estate trainers. So they all use the same script. Now, I'm not criticizing any of the top trainers. I highly recommend seeing any of them. But unfortunately, those top trainers have been successful and everybody goes to the same people. So they learn the same scripts. So the day after the home expires, they get, like I said, 50 or 60 more letters from realtors all over the region. Most of the letters say exactly the same thing because half of them will be using the Craig Proctor system or the Tom Ferry system, and or they'll be printing it out of a software program. And they'll get a dozen letters from agents claiming to be the very top selling agent in the entire region and Canada. And remember that the homeowner is just getting out of a relationship with a realtor that they think lied to them. Many of these letters will even contain bar graphs showing how their company outsells everybody else in the Eastern Hemisphere. So how does the owner know what's true and what's not true? It's easier to believe that we're all full of crap. So I know we've got a lot of highly trained and skilled brokers and agents here at our firm. And because we've got such a successful group, I'm going to back up and tell you what I went through probably 20 years ago and then probably 15 years ago. I was going after expired listings. I was doing really well. So, like I said, Ellie actually was calling them. At one point, we listed 30 properties in 30 days from mostly expired listings. But part of what happened was we started bumping into each other. We had a guy named Joe who was making phone calls and he was getting in appointments, and we'd end up competing with each other. So I took a step back we had a meeting, and I took a step back from calling any expired listings so that I'd give openings to the other agents. And unfortunately, what it meant was nobody else called expired listings. We didn't get any of them. So I got back and started again. I did it for a few years. We ran into it again, where some of the agents thought that I was taking too much of these potential leads. It's not fair. So I took a step back and they didn't do anything. So what we did instead is 5 different teams wanted to go after expireds. So we each had a different approach because each approach worked differently to attract people. And then we typically did not get the same listing appointments. So again, different individuals gravitate towards different messages. And I'm going to go through like 7 or 8 different expired techniques in a couple of minutes. Some homeowners will call you back on a carefully handwritten note. Others will call back if you've got a complete package. If anybody has watched Krista Mashore, she's one of the top trainers right now. She's funny to watch. She's got a cool package, which I'll show you in a couple of minutes. A little pricey, but some people will call back on that. Still others are attracted by something that's funny. And we've tried a lot of approaches and tested their effectiveness, and they all work just about as well as each other. But each one of these involves mailing or delivering something to the homeowner. And I need to be kind of blunt here and explain that the best approach to prospecting is always direct contact. In other words, if you stop at the house and knock on the door and introduce yourself in person, that is far more effective than sending something in the mail, no matter what it is you send in the mail. And the second most effective method is to get them on the phone and have a real conversation with them. But because I realize most realtors will never actually pick up the phone or call a home or stop by a home unannounced, I'm going to give you some alternatives as well. But I do want to go through all the different ways to at least contact them another way first. And when you are reaching out, just a quick note, Don't have a commission debate on the phone. I think I said this the other day. Somebody called in the one of our brokers and said, "What commission structure do you offer?" Because they're shopping commission structures. And you know what? You're going to find somebody who says, "Hey, we'll give you 110% because that's their claim." Now they're going to nickel and dime you $1 billion on the back end, and you're going to be responsible for absolutely everything in your life, and you're going to be doing your real estate business in, sweatpants and socks in your kitchen. But that is something that some people do. There are people who call mortgage companies and say, "What's your best interest rate?" And you know what? There's a lot of stuff that goes into an interest rate. We might tell them today it's 6%, but the reality is somebody else might tell them 5.5, but that 5.5 may come with 4 points. And probably one of our mortgage people could have done 5.5 for 4 points. So you have to stop people from shopping numbers and get in front of them. So you're not going to win a commission debate on the phone. What's the lowest commission you'll list for? Don't talk about that. You have to reframe the decision around net proceeds and time to close and stress, not fees. You've got to get in the door. And you have to have a low friction next step when you get them on the phone, some sort of review with them or something, and try and get in the door. Everything you do is getting in the door. Now, when you do get somebody on the phone, they're going to give you usually one of three responses, and they're all lies. I'm telling you, they're all lies. It's to get you off the phone. They must go to the same training school to learn this. Oh, well, I'm going to have it off the market for a few months, but I'm going to relist with the same agent. I love uh, Cherry Pop Tart or whatever name they have. I'm going to relist with the same agent. Okay, they almost never do, but that is something they say to get you off the phone. I've decided not to sell. Again, it's something to get you off the phone. So you've got to figure out how to keep them on the phone to get in the door to talk to them. So the agent is the one who overpriced the home. These are the complaints that I hear all the time. I used to go. I can't tell you how many expired listing appointments I've been on. Hundreds and hundreds. I might be over 1,000. And I'm not kidding. That's not an exaggeration. I've been on so many expired listing appointments. It's not funny. And over the years, I hear the same thing all the time. My agent told me my home was worth this much. I didn't think it was, but my agent gave me this price. That's almost never true, right? But they don't want to blame themselves. So that's what they're going to say. The agent's the one who overpriced it. They're going to say the agent did absolutely nothing to market my property. They put it in the multi-list and they disappeared to Florida somewhere. The agent never called me back. That might not even be true either. But the agent never even called me back. So these are the things you hear, and you have to say, "Oh, that's terrible," and move them back on track if you can. So when we're making a phone call to an expired listing, the track that I use is to acknowledge the other agent failed to sell the property, to confirm that the owner still wants to sell, because if you can get them to confirm that, it's going to eliminate over here. Confirm they still want to sell, let them talk about their property because that's what they want to do, and then ask for an appointment. If you can get through these steps, if you can keep them on the phone 60 seconds, you're probably going to get an appointment with them, probably 80% of the time. But you've got to keep them on the phone 60 seconds because they want to get off. And that's why they tell you they're going to relist with the same agent and they don't no longer want to sell. So acknowledge the other agent failed, confirm the owner still wants to sell, allow them to talk about their property and ask for the appointment. Hi, George. And by the way, this is how I start all the conversations. When whoever answers, "Hi, George." "No, this is Anne Marie." "Oh, crap." Hell, so you're the owner of the property on Town Square Drive, is that correct?" "Yeah." "Okay, good. Hey, this is Lauren over at Century 21, and I was looking at the MLS. By the way, I stutter on purpose when I'm doing this with a phone call. Hey, this is Lauren over at Century 21, and I was looking at the MLS, and I just can't find it as active in the MLS right now. So I was doing a little bit more checking, and it looks like it failed to sell with the agent that you hired to sell it. Is that correct?" By the way, I have this entire script in a PDF that I'll send out to you as well. So we're going to do it again. I'll come back to this again. "I was doing a little bit of checking, and it looks like it failed to sell with the agent you hired to sell it. Is that correct?" "Yeah." "Well, you still do want to sell, right?" By the way, this question catches them off guard, and they're more likely to say yes, so they can't later take it back and say, "I no longer want to sell." Okay? You've also, in this first part, confirmed that the first agent didn't sell it, which takes away a little bit of their wind. Okay? So you still want to sell it, right? Yeah. Okay, well, can you tell me a little bit about the condition of your property? Now, this segues into this because it gets them talking and opening up. I got to keep them on the phone for 60 seconds because that dramatically improves our ability to close. And if you don't talk about you or your company or your marketing and you get them focused on their house, you have a light years ahead ability to get in the door. So you still want to sell, right? Yeah. Okay, well, can you tell me a little bit about the condition of the property? Now, two things happen. One is they think you've got a buyer. And the second thing is they're going to defend the condition because what they heard you say is something's wrong. Can you tell me a little bit about the condition of the property? Oh, that's not why it didn't sell. It's in great shape. Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm just curious if you can tell me a little bit about it. George, and after they talk about their house, your response is, George, based on what you shared with me about the property, it looks like a pretty good property. And I'm really surprised it didn't sell. I know your community really well. You live at Hemlock Farms, and I know Hemlock Farms very well. Or you live in Parkway Manor. I know Parkway Manor very well. As a matter of fact, we've done a lot of work in this particular area, and over time, we've identified that there's really only three reasons a property doesn't sell in Hemlock Farms. Mind if I share that with you pretty quickly? They almost always say no. And by the way, no is what people like to respond with. So if you can coach the questions to give them the answer no, you can keep talking. And I'll come back. I think I have a second version of this. Do you mind if I share that with you pretty quickly? No. Well, the first reason that a property would fail to sell in your area in the community is if the property was grossly overpriced. Now, when I say grossly overpriced, what I mean is by 15 or 20%. Like a property's worth 400,000, it was listed at 500,000. That's grossly overpriced. Now, there's a chance that would be the cause of a property not selling, but in your case, I know the market and neighborhood. I can tell you that if I can tell you exactly if you're priced right or where you need to be, but it doesn't seem like you're grossly overpriced based on what I'm looking at in the listing. Would you agree with that? Oh, no, my price is fine. Now, by the way, what they want to hear is that the reason it didn't sell is because the agent sucked at marketing. That's what they want to hear. The reality is, it's almost always the price. But I can't say that on the phone because I can't get in the door. So let me go back and do this again. George, based on what you shared with me about the property, it looks like a pretty good property. I'm surprised it didn't sell. I know your community well. You live in Parkway Manor, and I know Parkway Manor really well. As a matter of fact, we've done a lot of work in this particular area, and over time we've identified there are really only three reasons why a property doesn't sell in Parkway Manor. Do you mind if I share that with you pretty quickly? No. Well, the first reason that a property would fail to sell in your community is if the property were grossly overpriced. Now, when I say grossly overpriced, I mean like by 15 or 20%. Like a property's worth 400,000, but it was listed at 500,000, that's grossly overpriced. There's a chance that will be the cause of a property not selling. But in your case, I know the market and neighborhood. I can't tell you if you're priced exactly where you need to be, but it seems that you're not grossly overpriced. Do you agree with that? No, I think my price is fine. Maybe a little high, but I think it's fine. Okay. Well, so if it's not overpriced, if it's not grossly overpriced, the second reason why a property doesn't sell is condition. And we just had a conversation. You shared with me the condition of your property. It doesn't sound like that's an issue. Now, every home can use a little bit of updating here and there, but usually in the neighborhood, if something doesn't sell because of condition, it means that somebody really didn't take care of the property. Now, maybe they didn't rent it out and the renters didn't take care of it and it needs to be completely renovated. But based on what you just shared with me about your condition, it doesn't seem like that would be a reason either. Would you agree with that? No, I mean, our home could use a few updates, but I think it looks great. Okay. Now, why is all this important? Again, because expired listings want to believe that their home is worth what they wanted for that house in the first place. And they don't want to do work on the house. They figure the buyer will do it for them. So they want to believe the issue was the agent not being aggressive enough. So we're not going to argue price or condition on the phone. We're going to wait till we get in front of them. We're trying to get to meet them so that we can help them make the best decision in their situation. Because the best decision might be pricing it appropriately, or taking out that green shag carpeting, or painting the bedroom in the kids' room that's painted black.
Can I
Yeah,
ask you a quick question in this? I know you're
sure.
saying like to try to get in front of them. So why, how about if an example is if these people don't live in the property and the property's vacant, would you still go to their own personal house? Because there's nobody to go to at the vacant property.
So I'd kind of pivot if they're in town or out of town. So if they live in the area,
No, within the
uh,
area, like if, let's say
yeah,
people are in the area, but they own multiple properties. Like suppose they want to sell investments and they want to sell them
yeah.
themselves and they're vacant. Would you go to their own residence, their own residence?
No, no, I try and meet them at the vacant house
Yeah, because
so that
then
at
no one's
least,
ever there. Then what do you do? Then you're forced to call.
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, if you're knocking on doors, you mean, or you mean with this phone call?
Well, what I'm saying is, you're trying to say get in front of the person, and most of the time it's better to get in front of them than versus a phone call. So
Right.
if I live in my own home and I own a property down the street that's vacant that I'm trying to sell and I'm never there and no one lives in it, it's vacant, would a realtor go to the person's own residence I mean, would you do that? Go to the own client's
Oh,
residence because to catch them and get in
yeah,
front of them because you're not going to see them
yes,
at the vacant house
that's
versus
true. Yeah,
calling
if you
them.
are going to their yeah, if you are going to their house, I'd go to their house. Yeah.
I mean, have you
If
ever done
you're,
that? Went to their own personal property, like that's
I've on
talking
for
about another
expired.
property they don't live in.
I honestly, for expireds, I've never gone and knocked on a door, but we've had a couple of people who've done it, and they've done pretty well with it.
I mean, because I don't have a
I,
problem doing that. It's just now I'm seeing things that are vacant, and I'm like, do I really want to go to their own residence? They're gonna think, what the hell, lady,
right.
knocked on my own door. I mean, I
Ah,
don't know. You have never done that?
I haven't. I know Wassel has, and I know he always goes to the owner's door when he goes after expireds. Yeah.
Okay, well then
Yeah.
that's okay. All right, I just had the quick question. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I
Sure.
just wanted to know if that would be like, not
No,
appropriate,
no
let's
problem.
say. Yeah.
No problem. So the last part of this is, so again, George, I think we can both agree it's not grossly overpriced. There are a range of prices in this neighborhood. Now, again, I don't know exactly where in that range your home would fall. I want to take a look at it so I can help you determine what the proper range is. And you might be priced perfectly. We also agree it's probably not the condition. So if it's not price and it's not condition, then in Hemlock Farms, the only other reason it would fail to sell is it wasn't marketed aggressively enough. And you're telling them what they want to hear. And that is where you're hopefully getting in the door. If it's not price, it's not condition. The third reason why a property would fail to sell in Hemlock Farms is it needs to be marketed more aggressively. And very often the homeowner will chime in then and say they don't think the agent did anything at all to sell a house. And your response is, I understand. Well, I'd love to take a look at the property. So here's what I'm going to do. And by the way, you don't give them a chance to answer that. I'd love to take a look at the property. So here's what I'd like to do. What I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and do some further research and start to identify a little bit more as to why the property hasn't sold. And more importantly, I'm going to put together some strategies on how I feel it needs to be marketed so the property could be sold. Obviously, I need to see the property so that when would be a good time for me to stop by? Would tomorrow evening at 6 be okay, or are you free during the day for me to come look at the property and sit down and share some of the information? Now, if you haven't ever done this before, this is called an alternative choice. You don't say, "Can I come over?" because they'll say no. You say, "Would tomorrow evening at 6 be okay, or would you be free Saturday afternoon to sit down and look at the property?" This is much more likely, two-thirds of the time, that they will give you one of those choices or give you a third choice. Well, I can't make it either of those, but what about Sunday? And that works pretty effectively. So let me run through one more version. Hi, Teresa. Yes. You're the only the property at 1797 Cherokee Lane, correct? Yes. Oh, I'm Lauren Kime, Century 21. I can't find it in the MLS. Apparently, it failed to sell with the last agent, but surely you still want to sell, right? Yes. What kind of condition is your property in? It's nice. It's not. There's nothing wrong with the house. It's nice. You've got new countertops and blah blah blah. Wow, that sounds really nice. I was wondering why your property failed to sell. It's probably confusing to you, but I know the neighborhood really well. And the one thing I know about Pocono Farms is that there's only three reasons why a property fails to sell. It could be grossly overpriced. Now, when I say grossly overpriced, what I mean is 15 or 20% above. Like if a property's worth 400,000, it was listed at 500,000. That's grossly overpriced. Now, there's a chance that would be a cause of a property not selling. But in your case, I know the market in the neighborhood, and I can't tell if you're priced exactly where you need to be, but it seems to me like you're not grossly overpriced. Would you agree with that? Well, yeah, I don't think we're that high. All right. So if it's not overpriced, not grossly overpriced, then the second reason why a property fails to sell is condition. But we just had a conversation and you shared with me the condition of your property, and it really doesn't sound like that's an issue. No, my condition's fine. Okay. When every home could use a little bit of updating here and there, but usually in the neighborhood, if something doesn't sell because of condition, it means that somebody really didn't take care of the property. Maybe had it rented out, the renters didn't take care of it, and it needs a complete renovation. But based on what you shared with me about your condition, it doesn't seem like that'd be the reason it didn't sell. Would you agree with that? Yeah. Okay. So again, Teresa, I think we can both agree it's not grossly overpriced. Now, again, there's a range of price in the neighborhood. Now, I don't know exactly where in the range your home falls. I'd want to take a look at it to help you determine what the proper range is. You might be perfectly priced. We could also agree that it's probably not conditioned. So if it's not price and it's not conditioned, then in Pocono Farms, the only other reason it would fail to sell is that it wasn't marketed aggressively enough. And they might chime in and say, yeah, they suck. I understand. I'd love to take a look at the property. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and do some further research and start to identify a little bit more as to why the property hasn't sold. And more importantly, I'm going to put together some strategies on how I feel it needs to be marketed so the property could be sold. Now, obviously, I need to see the property. So when would be a good time for me to stop by? Would you be free tomorrow about 6:30, or would you be free during the day on Saturday? What would be best for me to come look at the property and sit down and share some information? I can tell you this absolutely works. Using this script, for the people who've used it, we were getting in the door in about 1 out of 6, 1 out of 7 houses we called. Very high percentage. And if you get in the door an expired listing, you generally get the listing, unless they're reviewing 3 or 4 people, in which case you've got to be better on presentations. And if you're better on presentations, you'll still get it most of the time. So that's all part of it. Now, objections, how to respond to expireds on the phone. Why, if they ask these questions, because some of them get aggressive. Why didn't you show my property when it was on the market? Oh, I'm sorry, Terry. I actually didn't know your property was on the market until it went off. That might be one of the reasons you didn't sell. Are you in the MLS? Of course I'm in the MLS, as well as 3,400 other real estate agents in Lehigh Valley and thousands of properties for sale. But surely you don't expect every agent to know, especially busy agents like myself, to memorize the thousands of properties on the market any given day. You know, the key is that properties that I know are my listings, my company's listings, and listings of other agents who aggressively marketed them, where I'm seeing stuff coming to me on a regular basis on a property. And quite frankly, I never actually saw any information marketed to me about your property. But you do still want to sell now, correct? Because everything you do, you have to end it with that question. What do you mean they didn't market my property well? I'm not sure what your agent did or didn't do to market the property. I just know that it never hit my desk. So tell me, what kind of offers did you have on the property? Again, you're bringing it around to a question. What kind of conditions is the property in? Well, my conditions and my property's in good condition. That's not the problem. No, I didn't say that. I'm just trying to figure out what kind of condition your property's in so I can help. What kind of feedback did you get from showing? So I never got feedback. That SOB never called me back after I listed the property. I've had the other thing you might hear is I've had 10 agents call today. This you have to add a little humor in. Really? Only 10? That's crazy. Do you realize there's 3,400 agents working in Lehigh Valley Multilist right now? Well, at least you know 10 agents are in the market working. So, can you tell me, why were you planning on selling? Try and get them talking. Now, the other approaches we've used, because I am running out of time, I'm sorry, so I want to get through a little bit of this, but some of the other approaches we've used that really worked. Again, not instead, because honestly, phone calls work better than anything else. And so something I point out all the time is the 2 keys to getting the attention of an owner of an expired listing. The first key is, remember, you have to be different. You have to stand out from the crowd of agents who are going to send letters. It's all in the approach. You have to think outside the box and do something completely different than everybody else, because they're going to get a whole lot of letters. And the second key is to look at it from the seller's needs, from their perspective, not yours. Anytime you're attacking any market, whether the market's bank foreclosure departments or relocation companies or major corporations or estate attorneys or expired listings, you need to figure out what you can do to help them. What benefit do they need? And for expired listings, I've actually got 2 suggestions for thinking from the owner's perspective. First, they are unhappy with realtors. They think we all suck. They don't want to be tied into another 6-month contract. They don't want to get stuck with another agent because they had a bad experience with the house not selling. because they refuse to believe that the house didn't sell because it was priced too high. They think the house didn't sell because the realtor was inept and had poor marketing skills. And they're also mad at their prior realtor for not calling them back. And one of the ways you can get around this is providing, and some of you are horrified when I say this, a listing cancellation guarantee. That allows the seller to cancel your listing or terminate it if they're unhappy with their service. Now, you don't have to do this. I'm just saying this is one way to minimize that problem getting in the door or getting in the list with you. And the other way you can positively impact this group is by specializing in their situation. When you go after an expired, we used to have 7 or 8 different packages. We were the historic homes experts. We were the lakefront experts. We were the farm experts. And the whole package that we would deliver to the house revolved around being the farm expert or the historic home expert or whatever. And that we can handle market challenge properties. That worked very, very effectively. Free, I thought nothing is free, especially in Zillow. That's pretty funny. Uh, um, I see Dwight saying there's only 500 doing any real business, and one of them's Holly. All right, so, oh, now I can't close out this thing that's in my way on my screen. I don't know if you see on your screen.
You're too kind, Dwight.
This is what we used to use as our easy exit guarantee. And like I said, there are 2 messages that they respond to. First, they don't want to be tied down with another agent who doesn't provide service. So you need to convince them that you're going to provide service. And one way to show the seller that you mean it is to put put the control in their hands. So you provide the seller with a listing cancellation guarantee or a fire me guarantee, whatever you want to call it, where the guarantee is if the seller's unhappy with their service after 30 days, they can cancel the listing. And again, it's a hard pill for most agents to swallow because they believe every listing will cancel. And the truth is, a few of them will. But the further truth is that that you list more houses because you offer proof of your service, then you'll lose. And the second message that an expired will respond to is that you work specifically in their market, like I just said. So you've got to stand out one way or another. And what I did to stand out was what I called an expired package. Now, this is similar, but Krista Mashor's is better, and I'll show you that in a couple of minutes, to Krista's approach to trying to get expireds. Instead of sending a letter, we sent a whole package. And we had probably, I don't know, 20 sheets of paper in there, 20 things. They were all in color. And it started with something outlining that you were hiring a team instead of an agent. It was in a 9 by 12 envelope stuffed with information. It included a letter highlighting why we're different than other real estate agents. I explained our guarantees, how you could fire us if you were unhappy. I guaranteed we would call them every week. I guaranteed them we would get feedback from 95% of the people who showed it. And I did a brief description of our marketing. We called it our listing cancel, or we called it our easy exit policy that allowed a homeowner to cancel the listing. We also included a page dedicated to our guarantees. We included a photo page of our team. We included a sample of a full color home flyer. And we did a 12-page booklet, which I still have some of in the office, on why homes don't sell. And again, these clients are starved for information. How could it be that their house didn't sell while the ugly one down the street with the pale green shutters sold in only 7 days? It must be that nobody knew their house was for sale. Did they even advertise it in the New York Times? That's what you hear all the time, right? So our booklet explained there are 3 primary reasons home doesn't sell: marketing, staging, and pricing. It also gave the owner who read the booklet the opportunity to call us with no obligation for an analysis to figure out why the house didn't sell, why it was impacted, and what kind of marketing would have worked. And you can create different packages, like I said. We had a package for condos and townhouses. We had one for luxury homes. We had one for historic homes. We had one for farms, because we were trying to make it look like we were specialists. Now, this was working pretty well for us, and we were calling also. So again, some of the agents in the company said, well, we want to be able to have an opportunity to get expireds as well. So Wayne and Tim did something a little different. And they actually listed more houses with this than I did with the package. We called it the morning delivery. Most of you will never do this, but it actually worked. So not wanting to duplicate my efforts, Wayne and Tim went and bought these bags. They'll kind of get the newspaper in. You can get them on Amazon for like 1,000 of them for like $15 or something like that. And they would go out at the morning at 5:30 in the morning. I'm not kidding. And they would hang these on the doorknob. They'd pull up all the expireds first thing in the morning, go out and hang these on the doorknob of each of the expireds in their area. And they would put something in that was very visible. So when somebody was pulling something in from outside in the morning or getting ready to leave for work, they'd see this baggie and they'd bring it with them because of what was on the inside. Now, this actually beat any of the phone calls. Now, keep in mind, most of these expired listings don't know their house went off the market. But by the time they get home at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, they're getting 30 phone calls from agents. We wanted to circumvent that and get to them first. So most families are dual income. Most home sellers leave for work in the morning, and they wouldn't even know that a realtor had called until they got home and played back their voicemail. So when one of our agents was the first realtor, so our agents want to be the first one to speak with the expired listing. So they would go out in the morning, drop off this baggie, and I don't think I have it on here, or do I? I do. Okay. So they would have a letter in here that would have the whole thing was in bold. And the top of it would say, did you know, it was facing out, did you know your home is no longer on the market for sale? Was what was pointed out and what they would see in the baggie that was on their door. And it would confuse them because the sign was still out front and they didn't realize it had gone off the market. So they're confused and they actually read the letter. And again, this is before anybody else calls them. So, and they would get calls from people who would say, hey, Tim, I found your note on my door this morning. It says my home's no longer in the market for sale anymore. I don't understand. What do you mean it expired? My house didn't die. And again, homeowners don't necessarily know our lingo. So it would be an easy question for our agent to answer. And then they'd go into, were you happy with the service your current realtor gave you? No, I haven't heard from him in months. I didn't even know my house went off the market. So it worked really well. And then the letter would say something like this on the rest of it. The top third was all this. The second 2/3 were the listing agreement with your current realtor has expired. Your home was taken off the market today. Very often when a home is taken off the market, dozens of real estate agents call the owner and mail literature to them, making all sorts of promises in order to get them to list, get you to list with them. I believe I'm different than other realtors in the area. For example, I'm so sure of my service, I can offer a guarantee that if you're unhappy with my service at any time, you can cancel, you can fire me. You can cancel listing with no questions asked. I call it my listing cancellation guarantee. What I would like to do is have the opportunity to spend a few moments with you and find out what your plans, needs are. Then I can determine if and how you can help me, how I can help you. Please give me a call. Again, this worked very effectively, but it requires somebody going out early in the morning. Another agent named Bob had a different approach to the same problem. And I'm not sure if I like this one or don't like this one because, frankly, I think there are some issues with it. But he went to Staples and he hand wrote one side of a note card that said, "Dear blank," this is all he wrote. "I'm wondering if you consider selling your home to one of my buyers. Please call me." And then he'd have 1,000 of these printed and he'd keep these same markers. And he would actually write out, as expireds happened, if the guy's name was John, he'd change it to Dear John. And on the other end, he'd write the address and phone number. And people would get these and they would think that he had a buyer for the house. And that's why they would call, which is why I'm a little not as happy with this method, but it really worked. So he'd have them on larger postcards that stood out in the mail. And again, "Dear John, I'm wondering if you would consider selling your home to one of my buyers. Please call me." So he would send these out every morning. And people would call him and say, "I got your note. Do you have a buyer for my home?" And his response was, "I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. But I'm working with a lot of buyers right now. I'm hoping one of them will like your house. I saw it went off the market. It looked like a beautiful home. I'm shocked that it expired. And I've got a lot of buyers I'm working with. So I'm hoping one of them would fit with it, but I haven't seen your home yet." And they might say, "Well, why didn't you sell it when it was on the market?" Well, at Century 21, we try and sell our own listings first. That's what our home sellers pay us to do. And that's what's fair to our sellers. Anyway, I wouldn't mind stopping out and at least taking a quick walk through your house. That way I can tell you whether or not it will work for any of my buyers. And he was getting about 1 out of 8 of these. So another method that worked effectively. Third or fourth one, the hay box. Now, again, I'm going to go through a couple of these pretty quickly. I still have probably 100 of these laying in my office. Several agents have tried this over the years. It works effectively, but you have to get to them right away and you have to leave it where they actually are. So, to Holly's point, if the house is empty, it's not going to work. So, we had these cake boxes made. You can buy these really cheap on Amazon also. We used to get them from a bakery supply store. The little cake boxes. We would go pick up a bale of hay, I'm not kidding, and fill this box with hay. And we'd write across the top of this. And this sounds corny, but it works. Finding a good real estate agent is like finding a needle in a haystack. And they would open the thing, and in the box would be hay with a business card. And Bonnie did this for a while. She ended up getting married and moved to Ohio. But Bonnie did this for a while pretty successfully as well. She would get a plastic needle. Well, she'd get like 100 of them for $1 over at Walmart. And she would string with colorful string a needle to her business card, stick it in the hay, stick the card on top, and then she'd also have an envelope in there. And the envelope would say something like, there are many successful realtors in the area, and to be successful, I need to market myself differently. I think I've proven I can do that. Actually, let me back up because actually, what it said in the beginning was something along the lines of, um, there are many homes for sale in the marketplace right now. To get your home sold, you have to make it stand out from everything else that's for sale. There are also many great realtors in the area. To be successful in selling real estate, I need to market myself differently and I need to stand out from everybody else in the market. I think I've just proven I can do that, and I'd like to do that for your home as well. Something along those lines. A real short card, and that was very effective as well. Fifth one, this is one that I used for a little while that worked. That was fun. We would actually take out we would print up letters, and the top third of it, again, the headline is the most important part of this. Top third of it said, "This letter has been pre-crumpled for your convenience." And underneath it would say, "The listing agreement with your current realtor is expired and your property was taken off the market today." By the time you read this letter, I'm certain you've heard from dozens of real estate agents claiming to be the best in the market and making all sorts of promises in order to get you to list with them. I believe I'm a bit different than other agents in the area. What you need to sell your property is someone who understands how to market, or someone who understands how to make her team and her property stand out from the competition. I can do that for you. And then we would crumple up the letter into a ball, flatten it back out, and then put it in an envelope with this part sticking out. This letter's been pre-crumpled for your convenience. People would get the letter, they'd open it because it crinkled, and we'd handwrite the address on the outside. And they'd pull it out, and some of them would get a chuckle, and we get about 1 out of 8, 1 out of 9 that would call us back. Now, that is not as professional as some of the letters that get printed out of the CRM, but it stands out from what everybody else was doing. And it worked pretty effectively to try and catch attention. By the way, we did this also with for sale by owners. Um, and here's another version of it. In addition, I guarantee my service, blah, blah, blah. Another one that we tried, this didn't work quite as well, but to kind of give you an idea that sometimes properties don't go back on the market as quickly. We would set them up in our CRM where we'd send out 6 or 7 postcards over a 2-week period. The first 3 days, I got a postcard every day, and we had a different one for each day. Puzzled over why your home hasn't sold yet? You need a proven marketing plan backed by experience of a seasoned real estate agent or one of the top real estate agents in the Lehigh Valley, whatever you want to say. Let me help you put the right pieces together, get your home sold. Then the next day, looking for the perfect, oh, that's not it. But we'd have different cards. Home hasn't sold yet? Don't panic. I've helped many people sell homes which expired with the previous agent. Please give me a call. So that was another item that worked well. And that is not as effective as calling, but it's another method. One of the other ones we did, you have to have a printer that'll print on postcard paper, but you can get blank postcards from Staples, or you can order them through the mail. They probably have them on Amazon. We would take the person's photo of the house out of the multi-list. So we didn't actually go out and take this photo. We take the multi-list photo of the house, and we would use Canva, which you've all got access to. We would import the photo, and we'd have a card template we drop it into. So this takes about 30 seconds, and it puts on it whatever heading you want, stunning 3,800 square foot home on 10 acres, and it has your logo and your name, and it puts it on the front. On the back, you put in something about how I noticed your home went off the market and I'm shocked it didn't sell. Please give me a call. I'd like to talk to you about it. Now, this they will absolutely hold on to because it's their house you're sending them, and they get kind of shocked when it shows up with their house on it. And the last expired method I'm going to show you is Krista Mashore. If you ever get a chance to listen to her, she does a 3-day workshop and then she tries to sell you more stuff. But her 3-day workshop, something like $50. And they always try and sell you more stuff. They're coaching, they're this, they're that. So she has a box. I don't know if you see the context here. This is a pretty big box. It's basically my expired package. It's the same stuff I gave out. But she has these boxes printed. These boxes are like $6 or $7 a piece. They're not cheap. And she would drop them off or mail them to the house. Find out why your home didn't sell here. And the QR code went back to a page on her website about expired listings. Inside, she'd have information on her team. The reason she was one of the top agents in the entire country, she's no longer selling, is because she's teaching people, is because she did something that nobody else did. You get 100 letters and a box, and the box stands out. And they're going to absolutely, if they're interviewing 3 or 4 people, you're one of the people they're going to interview every time. So that is something that was very powerful to get in the door. And she has a series of different boxes. Now, I did order the template, by the way, for making this box. The problem is you still have to have a box company make it, which is expensive. So if you can order like 10 or 20 of them, but it does end up running some money. But it is a cute way of going out in front of people. I'll mention a couple of things about for sale by owners. I'll probably pick up on this next week because I don't want to tie up for another half hour. But for sale by owners are another great source of leads, and they do it because they think they can save the commission, or they can want to control the process, or sometimes they do it because they've got something bad that they don't want anybody to find out, like a buried oil tank or who knows what, and so they sell it on their own. So there are a lot of ways to approach for sale by owners, and I will, including the crumpled letter approach, which I've done before. We do a relocation campaign. We do some phone calls. I've got a buyer campaign, our mortgage co-conspirator campaign, a bunch of them, our FSBO survival packs. So there are a few of them that we use, and I'll come back around to this next Wednesday. But I do want to say it today, and let me just see what all the text messages are.
Yeah.
Just self-disclosure.
Canva. We need Canva because that's going to really help us all do stuff for our site, create things. Like,
I agree.
That's what we really need. We need to know how to create our own stuff.
All right. I promise by tomorrow afternoon, I will have a date and time set up with Ray to run it. So we'll have that set up. I did talk to her yesterday. I'll make sure it's done because I don't think she's in anymore today. I think she left. So
All right.
I'll make sure you get done.
Okay.
So last couple of things, at least for today, everything we talked about really comes down to one idea, which is listings follow conversations. And whether we're doing cold calls to create them or calling expired listings or calling for sale by owners, you've got to be talking to homeowners, and you eventually meet somebody who needs to move. So the agents who win in this business aren't necessarily the smartest or the most experienced. They're the ones who are talking to the most people. And you've got to think of prospecting as a triangle. On one side, you've got cold calling neighborhoods. On another, you've got expired listings. And on the third, you've got for sale by owners. And each of those activities gets you to the same place, getting you to listing appointments. And you can build a consistent system around these 3 methods to build a pretty stable pipeline. And finally, at least for today, before I ask for any questions, real estate agents spend a lot of money on tools, on websites, on CRM systems, on advertising, lead generation platforms. But one of the most powerful tools in this business is still the simplest one. It's still your telephone. And every call you make is simply an opportunity to start a conversation that can eventually lead to a listing. So I'm going to at least pull it off here for a minute and see if anybody's got any questions while we're on. And then we'll come back to this on Wednesday. And I promise you, we will absolutely have something set up. As soon as I get off this meeting, I will get hold of Ray and see if we can set up a day for Canva.
Do you have those boxes at your office, like one of them for that, fill it with the straw?
I do. Yeah, I've actually got quite a few.
I only want one. I just need one. I'm going to try that with something. Just one. See if it works. Okay, I'll get it.
I don't have a hay, but hay's pretty easy.
I do have a mini patch who I have outside. I have fresh bales of hay everywhere. I do. So I don't need that, but I need the box or whatever you buy.
Sure. No problem.
All right. I'll get it tomorrow.
No problem. Any questions anybody's got?
Hmm?
Any other questions anybody's got that I can answer?
Nope. Just waiting for
Okay.
Canada next
No
week.
questions.
What is your next week? What are you doing next week besides
I
Canada?
was gonna go.
Something
I
else.
was
What?
gonna go in. Yeah, Wednesday at 3. I was gonna try and do another one at 3, but I was gonna do some digital marketing. I was gonna do some digital marketing, some webinar marketing because that can work pretty effectively. I'm gonna probably go through for sell by owners pretty quick first, just because I didn't get to cover it here. And I'll build in something on farming techniques, like going after demographic groups or geographic groups. That's kind of the goal.
I'd
Okay.
like I'd like to
Okay.
just comment for a second.
Yeah.
I think there's like 100 realtors that aren't on here that need to be
Yeah.
on. And
Hey,
I
we'll take anything we can get for free to help us. Help us. That's okay. If
and
they're not getting
you
help
know,
and they don't do anything, it's their own problem.
I agree, and I love you, Holly, forever.
I love you, Dwight.
We've done business for 25 years, but
Oh my God, yeah, we're old timers.
yeah, but I'd like to know, how can we get more people on here? I mean, that's the thing.
Well, they have to be
That's a,
motivated, I guess, and
True.
I don't know. How do you
that's a,
motivate them? I don't know. When
I
they're
love
crying
I
and
love
they're not making anything, that's when you say, "Well, you missed our meeting."
I love Levon's hat, by the way, but because I'm
Thank
big
you.
Yankee fan. But I appreciate everyone that gets on here, but I just think there's so many people that need it. Holly, you and I, we've made our money. We're good, you know.
I'm not done yet, though. No, no,
If you want to
Lauren,
make more, don't get me
I know.
wrong, but
I can't retire yet.
no, I could, but I'm not, you know.
Well, you know
So
what this is good for? This is good for even the people that have been here. It's
yeah,
good for
no, I
peers
think
that are not experienced
oh
and the experienced, because the ones that have been here, plus the ones that are new, this is going to help you to work smarter and not harder. So if you can find these techniques to try to get, so even if you get one thing, I mean, look at the money in your pocket just from one thing. If we could get it,
yeah, I mean
True.
the average
Something,
commission
it
is
helps.
$6,000 anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So just, anything. So I know every time I see someone now, like I'm going to try to go after this now. Every time I see somebody, for sale by owner signs, whatever, I like pull over and take a picture of the thing.
Yeah,
Right.
no, absolutely.
I'm like, what's this phone number? I don't know. What's this address?
Well, I mean, and what I had a team of 14 at
Mhm,
Gassadon, and I spent 10,000 a month on Zillow.
mhm. Yeah.
And, I mean,
Yeah,
but-
crazy.
and I followed up on each and every call, and
Yeah.
I found it like it took sometimes 8 to 9 calls till you actually got
Yep.
there.
Yeah,
You
you got to
know?
keep
Yeah.
bugging people,
So
and you
I
do.
think persistency pays. You
Yeah.
can't feel like you're a pain in the ass. You got to feel like you're
No, you have to be a pain in the ass, because the pain in the ass is going to get it.
that's
That's exactly it. The
absolutely
pain
correct.
in the ass is going to get it.
Yeah,
Mhm,
True.
yeah. Persistency definitely pays in
mhm.
business. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, I just wish we could get more people involved, especially with your knowledge, and to lesser as and sent me. But I mean, Lauren has so much wisdom that he offers. We just need to get more people involved.
Yeah.
Working on it.
I
Well,
think
Definitely.
we need to get
we're
more people
trying.
back.
I
think we
really,
need to
I
get
want to
back more-
master that Canva.
Well,
I
I
tried
know.
practicing today, but I have to see Lauren, because I didn't know even how to. I logged in with my own email. I want to be able to log through Century 21 and try to master
Yep.
what all that does, because that looks like if you can create, like you can do your own advertising with that. You can create all
You
your
can.
flyers, I guess. Like I never did that
Yep.
through Moxie Works either, though. But is Canva better for that, or Moxie Works if you're creating
Well,
flyers?
Moxie gives you a lot more ability to do different things. So it's got a lot built in. Moxie pre-creates stuff, so it's nice for having stuff that you can just click and it's done. But
Okay.
Canva lets you create anything, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
Levon, was that something you were gonna say?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I forgot before I used to go somewhere and I used to be able to see the numbers and get phone call, get the numbers of the area that I want to call. Like What's the name of that again?
So when you're trying to find RedX, it's called
Red.
theredx.com. I don't know the password off the top of my head, but we have an account with TheRedX. That'll allow you to pull a neighborhood. If you want to pull a particular property, but you need the address, let me show you something
Mhm.
real quick. If you want to pull a particular address, like you've got a for sale by owner and expired listing,
Hmm.
in this portal that we've got, C2 Unkind University,
Yeah.
click on AI Hub and then Who's Who AI. So if you click on that as an example, I'll try mine as an example. Just put in the address because that's where it comes from. So 4137 Cambridge Court as an example.
Hmm.
Search property owners. That is going to come up with, actually, it even lets you do a quick CMA on the house, which is kind of cool. That
That's
comes up
cool.
with, here's my cell phone number. First thing is cell phone number. There's my work number. There's my old home number. I don't have that anymore. And gives you possible email addresses for them. So it
Okay, and that will
actually
have to do
pulls
not.
up. This doesn't have the do not call list. It doesn't
Okay.
compare it with that,
Oh,
but it does at least give you all the contact information pretty quick.
Okay.
But if you're pulling a neighborhood, the Red X does have, it does check if it's on the do not call list. Otherwise, you got to go to do not call.gov and look up the phone number.
Mm, got it. Yeah.
Okay.
okay.
Sounds good. Well, I
All
hope
right.
this was helpful, and I
The,
will.
the only thing everything starts with a phone call,
Yeah.
and I mean, there's so many things. The Eli Lilly come into the valley,
Mhm.
that's a great way to start a conversation,
Conversation. Yeah.
I mean, interest rates are ticked a little lower. I mean, when Laura and I started, I mean, my first deal was at 17% on
Oh my God,
13
I know.
years.
Mine was like 13%. I know.
I
Yeah.
mean, that was 1985, and people are like
That's high.
freaking out about
Mhm.
7%. It's
Yeah.
like, okay,
That's still too
And they
high.
were buying down. They were buying the points down and everything else. Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it's coming, and there's so many other opportunities, but everything starts with a phone call. You need to
Sure.
touch your base, and you need to. I mean, he pays to the Chamber of Commerce. Get out there. You can meet. I always taught the new agents when I owned Casadon with Jack that you had to make your 25 contacts a week. And you can do that in an hour.